What was the worst time in history? The Time magazine decided it was the year 2020. It seems to me that the Times magazine should have hired a competent historian. Yes, it was the time of bitter political disputes and riots, which deteriorated into violence and, above all, the pandemic that threw us off balance. Each one of us has faced disturbing thoughts. It felt like we met this planet at a very strange time in our life, but believe me, it wasn't the worst. In this video, I'll give you the opportunity to wake up in other, more challenging periods, so as not to judge the year 2020 in the heat of the moment. You'll find out, what is life like without the sun? How can the absurd one-man rule destroy the fate of thousands of people? And what was the worst year in human history? You woke up very early to sharpen your spears for mammoth hunting. You are a representative of the Clovis culture, and you lived during the Younger Dryas in North America. Suddenly, you see a strange star with a long white tail in the sky. It keeps increasing day by day. You live at the time when people, of course, don't know a thing about space yet, and they're unaware that this strange star is actually a huge asteroid composed of fragments up to 4 kilometers in diameter. And then, this deadly object crashes into the ice sheets of North America and Europe. The energy released at that moment triggers a series of fires. You grab your wife, your kids, and run away from the fire. A huge amount of ash from burned, dense continental forests is mixed with an astronomical amount of water vapor released into the atmosphere from within the Earth-impacting asteroid. This black veil covered the sun, so your journey continues in the dark. Glacial water starts melting. You can see the waves 200 feet high rolling through the north. Nowadays, they would have fully covered the Tower Bridge. Only a short time ago, you were running away from fire, and now you're afraid that you and your family will be swept away by the waves. Meltwater rushes into the Atlantic. Ocean currents will stop for decades, plunging the world back into the Little Ice Age, which will last for 1,000 years. Now you're a homeless nomad who wanders in search of at least some surviving plants or animals to feed his family. Or should I say, those who didn't die on the way. And if in ancient times people's lives were threatened by space phenomena, with the development of society, universal damage could be caused by people themselves. The worst time for political reasons. You wake up early again because you're a poor Chinese farmer in the late 20th century. You must go to work and earn points. Many years later, such a remuneration system will be shown in the Black Mirror series as a version of events in the near dystopian future, and the viewers won't even know that such things already existed in the past. The Chinese leader, Chairman Mao Zedong, developed an economic and social plan for rapid modernization. Wages and money are replaced by work points. There's no private property either. From now on, everything belongs to the commune. Millions of skilled farmers get transferred from farming to manufacturing. There's nobody to harvest crops, and they start to rot. You're desperately trying to save the harvest, and then Mao orders to exterminate all the sparrows to stop them from eating the cereal seeds. You are shocked by such a foolish political reform because once the sparrows are exterminated, there's no one to exterminate locusts. You can't alone bear the burden of stopping the spread of these pests. You have nothing to eat, and eventually, you, along with the other 55 million victims of Mao's thoughtless policies, end up starving to death. Staying at home during quarantine is nothing compared to the Mao era. At any time, we could order food delivery and have a quiet, safe rest in our apartments, which nobody intended to take away from us. And now imagine this. You wake up on the North American coast where you live with your tribe. Some strangers approach you. They don't bother using any polite ways to ask to get some supplies from you. And when they get rejected, one of them threatens to deprive you of the moonlight. The next night, the moon seems to be stolen from the sky. When the strangers come again, you share food with them. You just don't know that you're dealing with Christopher Columbus. He's very good at astronomy, so he managed to fool you because there was a lunar eclipse that day. This man's visit triggered a series of horrifying events. When Columbus discovered America instead of Asia, all of Spain rushed to this exotic country. The Spanish were quickly followed by Portugal and then France, England, and Holland. Thus began the colonization of America. Finding no initial resistance from the local population, Europeans behaved like aggressors, killing and enslaving Native Americans. The Spanish conquerors were particularly cruel. They looted and burned the villages of the settlers and then killed them. You managed to escape from the invaders' attack, but in a few days, people in the tribe started getting a fever, feel nauseous, and suffer from whole body aches. The thing is that after contact with European settlers, the entire tribes that had been isolated from the world for years started getting exposed to new diseases such as smallpox. You're dying in a post-apocalyptic wasteland, knowing that your tribe and culture were destroyed by the conquerors. The only thing that might be more dreadful is times of large-scale military conflicts when there were great losses on all sides. You wake up, but this time in the middle of the night. You and those of like mind conspired to set fire to a Catholic church at midnight tonight. You're a student at Charles University in Prague, and instead of gaining education, you have to fight for your religion and freedom in the military conflicts between the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation and the rest of Europe. It all started with a series of religious struggles between Protestants and Catholics. In southern Germany, only a third of the population survived the war, which eventually lasted for 30 years. It took over a century for many areas to recover from the effects of economic and social decline. According to various estimates, the total losses ranged from 5 to 8 million people. But the worst part is that you might not experience the honor of dying in battle, but instead die of typhus, or dysentery, or bubonic plague. There are data that in Germany, it killed more people than the battles did. You might as well wake up in the first half of the 20th century. During that period, the world was shattered by 2 world wars within 30 years. Genocide and massacres were committed throughout the world in the name of political ideologies, resulting in the death of hundreds of millions of people. Even if you were a veteran who managed to survive the First World War, you could end up dying of the Spanish flu pandemic. It claimed the lives of up to 100 million people. That's 5% of the world population. But the most devastating conflict ever witnessed in history is the Second World War. It was the limit to human cruelty. In addition to military actions, which obviously claimed many lives, Nazis were ordered to exterminate all Jewish people, as well as Roma, some Slavic people, Jehovah's Witnesses, the LGBTQ+ community representatives, and people with mental and physical disabilities. During those years, the number of deaths reached 18 million people. But the aggression came not only from Nazis. On August the 6th, 1945, America dropped an atomic bomb on innocent civilians of Hiroshima in Japan. It exploded with an energy of 15,000 tons of TNT. The bomb demolished and burned about 70% of the buildings. The explosion killed about 40,000 people, and those who survived suffered from chronic diseases, cancer, and other effects of radiation for the rest of their lives. Therefore, when you went to sleep during the Second World War, you could never be sure you'd wake up. Your house could be blown up, burned, or you could be shot while asleep. But still, what's the worst time to be alive in history? The final event I'm going to tell you about is very similar to the disaster I started with. The worst morning in history looks like this. You wake up in Iceland in early 536, and you can't see anything around you because of a thick fog. At that time, the sky above Europe, the Middle East, and parts of Asia got covered by such dark fog that it blocked the sun for a year and a half. That's how the Dark Age began. The thing is that in Iceland, there was a catastrophic volcanic eruption, which spread ash across the northern hemisphere. But you don't know that, and you think the tragedy is some dire omen of heaven, as if a higher power is punishing you for something. You're trying to bundle up because the Earth's average temperature dropped sharply between 1.5 and 2.5 degrees Celsius. And so this went on for 18 months. Thus began one of the coldest decades in the last 2,300 years. Drought and famine spread everywhere. Suddenly, you get sick. It feels like you're burning. You're weak. You're dizzy. The pain is splitting your head to pieces. You keep fainting. You're thrashing around in bed. You're coughing up blood, and you're experiencing strange visions. This is how plague will take your life. The plague had been striking people for 15 or 18 major waves of the pandemic. That disease killed about 50 million people. Corpses covered the streets like carpets. What do you say about the pandemic period now? Are we really living during the worst years? In fact, people have never lived longer, better, safer, or richer than nowadays. In the 18th century, the average life expectancy of the world's population was only 29 years. And today, on average, we can make it to 70. Just for the last 25 years, 1/7 of humanity has been saved from extreme poverty due to economic growth. More people than ever before have enough food. Modern medicine made significant progress, and the spread of democracy made the world freer and safer. This stunning leap is the greatest achievement in human history. Write in the comments your reasons why you think the time we live in is the best, and subscribe.